For centuries, England was ruled by the powerful Plantagenet dynasty, but by the mid-15th century, their family tree was a tangle of rival branches, each with a claim to the throne. From this web of kin came a conflict that would tear the nation apart, a civil war known as the Wars of the Roses. The war was not named for the flowers at the time, but for the rivalry between two powerful houses, the House of Lancaster, represented by the red rose, and the House of York, by the white. The stage was set by the weak and mentally unstable King Henry VI, a Lancastrian. His ineffective rule and his powerful, ambitious wife, Queen Margaret of Anjou, fueled discontent among the nobles. Enter Richard, Duke of York. He had a strong claim to the throne, and with the king's frequent bouts of catatonic madness, Richard was made protector of the realm. But when Henry recovered, Queen Margaret, fiercely protective of her son's right to the throne, maneuvered to strip Richard of his power. The first shots were fired in 1455 at the Battle of St. Albans. It was a skirmish that escalated into a full-blown war. Over the next 2 decades, the crown would change hands no less than 5 times. This was a war of brutal reversals, where victory was often followed by devastating loss. And then there was Richard Neville, the Earl of Warwick, a man so powerful he was known as the Kingmaker. He was a staunch Yorkist, helping put Edward IV on the throne. But after a falling out, Warwick switched his allegiance, launching a rebellion that briefly restored the defeated Henry VI to power. It was a war of shifting loyalties and deadly betrayals. In 1483, King Edward IV died suddenly, leaving his 2 young sons, the princes in the Tower, as his heirs. Their uncle Richard, Duke of Gloucester, took the throne as Richard III. The princes were never seen again. Their disappearance and Richard's ruthless ambition horrified many, leading to one final bloody chapter. The final confrontation came in 1485 at the Battle of Bosworth Field. The Lancastrian cause, now almost extinct, rested on a distant claimant, Henry Tudor, a Welsh nobleman. He faced King Richard III in a desperate final battle. In a moment of high drama, Henry's allies turned on Richard, and the king was cut down in the thick of the fight, famously crying, "A horse! A horse! My kingdom for a horse!" The war was over. With the death of Richard III, Henry Tudor was crowned King Henry VII, and his marriage to Elizabeth of York symbolically united the rival houses. The 2 roses were finally joined, a new dynasty was born from the ashes of a civil war, and the Tudors would go on to rule England for over a century. The Wars of the Roses was a time of great upheaval in England, a brutal struggle for power that resulted in the deaths of countless nobles and the rise of a new dynasty. At the heart of this conflict were 2 families, the House of Lancaster and the House of York, whose claims to the throne were rooted in a complex web of kinship and ambition. The story began with King Henry VI, a Lancastrian king whose mental instability and inability to produce a male heir led to challenges from his cousin Richard, Duke of York. Richard's claim was backed by the powerful Neville family, whose influence and wealth made them a force to be reckoned with in the English court. The backing of the Nevilles gave Richard a significant advantage, allowing him to raise an army and challenge Henry's authority. As Richard's popularity grew, so did the animosity between him and Henry's wife, Queen Margaret of Anjou. Known for her fierce determination and political acumen, Margaret was determined to protect her son's right to the throne. This rivalry escalated, leading to open warfare in 1455 with the First Battle of St. Albans. With the outbreak of war, England was thrown into chaos. The country was divided, with supporters of Lancaster and York forming factions and vying for control. Battles were fought across the land, with neither side able to gain a decisive victory. This period of the war saw the emergence of some notable figures, including Richard Neville, Earl of Salisbury, known as the Kingmaker. and his brother, John Neville, the Warwick II. Their strategic brilliance and military skills played a crucial role in the outcome of the conflict. The tide of the war began to turn in favour of York in 1460, when Edward IV was crowned king at the age of 18. His reign initially appeared promising, with hopes for a stable succession and a restoration of order. However, internal conflicts and external threats soon emerged, challenging his authority and the future of the Yorkist dynasty. Edward IV faced opposition not only from Lancastrian loyalists, but also from ambitious members of his own family. Richard, Duke of Gloucester, his younger brother, became a prominent figure in these power struggles. Gloucester's growing influence and his close relationship with the unpopular Queen Elizabeth Woodville raised tensions within the royal family and the wider nobility. Richard of York's son, Edward IV, secured the throne for his house. But the war wasn't just about kings, it was about the men who made them. The most influential of all was Richard Neville, the Earl of Warwick, a man so powerful he was known as the Kingmaker. He was a staunch Yorkist, helping put Edward IV on the throne. But a falling out between the two saw Warwick switch his allegiance, launching a rebellion that briefly restored the defeated Henry VI to power. This was a war of shifting loyalties and deadly betrayals, but ultimately it was a war of brothers. In 1483, King Edward IV died suddenly, leaving his two young sons, the princes in the Tower, as his heirs. Their uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, took the throne as Richard III. The princes were never seen again. Their disappearance and Richard's ruthless ambition horrified many, leading to one final bloody chapter. With the disappearance of the princes, the last vestiges of Lancastrian hope seemed to fade away. The stage was set for Richard III's coronation, but his reign was far from peaceful. Opposition simmered, waiting for a chance to erupt. That chance came from an unlikely source. A distant Lancastrian claimant named Henry Tudor, a Welsh nobleman with a tenuous claim to the throne. Despite the odds stacked against him, Tudor assembled a small force and marched on England. His army, a motley crew of loyalists, rebels, and foreign mercenaries, was a testament to the widespread discontent with Richard III's rule. The final confrontation came at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485. As the two armies clashed, the fate of the kingdom hung in the balance. In the midst of the battle, a pivotal moment occurred. Richard Neville, Earl of Salisbury, who had been fighting for Tudor, switched sides, joining Richard III's forces. This unexpected turn of events almost certainly sealed the king's fate. As the battle raged, Richard III found himself surrounded. Wounded and outnumbered, he fought valiantly, but was eventually captured. On the orders of his captors, he was taken to the nearby town of Leicester, where he was executed. Richard's head was cut off and hung from the nearby church tower, a grim reminder of the fallen king. With Richard III dead, the way was clear for Henry Tudor to claim the throne. He was crowned King Henry VII, uniting the rival houses of Lancaster and York through his marriage to Elizabeth of York, the daughter of Edward IV. This symbolic union brought an end to the Wars of the Roses and marked the beginning of the Tudor era in England. The Wars of the Roses was more than just a struggle for the throne. It was a clash of ambitions, rivalries, and changing tides of fortune. The story of this turbulent period in English history continues to fascinate us today, reminding us of the complexities of power, the allure of ambition, and the enduring legacy of the past. Hit the subscribe button, follow more history stories.